Hi, this is Mark. In this video, I'm going to talk about expectations and how I think in life or in general, it's good to remove the external expectations and focus more on the internal expectations. So, what I mean by that, of course, this has different meaning. But like, if you suppose you have an expectation, you want you want to achieve, let's say, a goal, and the expectation. Um, Externally, you could think of like things like wealth, fame, status, all these different external sources of feedback, and or that lead to the ultimately lead to the high or expectation. And the differentiation of internal expectation is really kind of what your expectation of how you're progressing, or how your uh the it could be the your efficiency at achieving some goal, or it could be like you're learning more information, so you have an expectation of your own um, ability to improve in many different domains, but you're not really focusing on like these external, like these you're trying to optimize your internal um, feedback, or how you approach situations, growing, like if you ever grow as if you're growing as a person, or you're growing in as an entrepreneur or in different areas. You should not focus solely, or put so much focus on what you're going to achieve as your end output, like how much money you're going to receive, or because a lot of times nowadays we want this instant gratification. What ends up happening is with social media is it causes disturbance in our reward feedback. So if you imagine, a situation, let's suppose we, how would I put this? So if we define events as a line segment, and from A to B, and let's now define a subset of that line segment as a new event, and we can break it into smaller and smaller subsets. And what I want to define initially is the initial subset. Let's suppose it's the frequency of utilization of social media as a reward. So what ends up happening is, if you play video games, for instance, you get a reward for during that secession, and if you're interested. So the reward again is proportional to interest, and many different things. I can't cover all the global areas, but there's infinitely many. There's so many different areas that I could like reward is proportional to. But let's just interest is one of the, like, a given, because if you're not interested in something, you're not going to get as much reward feedback, and therefore it would deter you from doing or entering into that area. Um, Another thing, so if you define that event as a frequency, now you take a subset. Well, the subset, this is what's happening now in reality. It's getting smaller and smaller. So the frequency that we're using the social media platforms is increasing, and therefore it's changing our reward. Think about like when you sleep. When you sleep, you notice if you follow the same pattern, if you sleep at a similar time, and it follows this loop. What you notice is you don't even need your alarm clock anymore. Your body adjusts, it adapts, it acclimates, and therefore it creates this cyclic recognition system built in, and ultimately, or it just becomes like an automated process. Well, same with social media and reward. We recognize, by recognize, is when we receive these rewards. That's again why sugar can be addiction, because or coffee. During these times, if you build these routines, or these times, or these, you just it doesn't necessarily have to be the same time, but let's just suppose you have one cup of coffee per day. You continue doing that for a long period. Well, the probability of you quitting is going to be lower as you progress, because it's like a force. It's like you get this boost from drinking that cup, but then what happens is eventually that boost is dampened. So a lot of times you need more and more to get the same output. So that's why coffee again can also be an addiction, but you realize this. So essentially, so now you know if the coffee becomes more frequent, throughout the day. If you split it, it's just going to create more and more. Uh, it's like it's going to be harder and harder and harder, to break out of that pattern or how to get out of that, and also it's gonna you're gonna get adjusted to this, and your body's gonna adjust to when you receive these rewards, how many times you receive these rewards, and therefore it's like a force that pulls you to that it's like that's why these addictions are I represent as a force because ultimately you're pulled in that to do or tempted to do so. And I think that's an issue with social media is like you get these instantaneous rewards, and if you increase the frequency of utilization, it's harder to break away. And what ends up happening is the expectation and all that, it's actually escalating. So when you talk about like being happy and so forth, it's a lot of times has to do with these expectation, but it's if it's an external source, like you want you want it now, or you want it immediately, or if that becomes your implemented or ingrained in your mindset, well, instantaneous, anytime you rely on instantaneous reward, the more you rely on it, the more it's going to deter you from entering this long-term type of goal, because a lot of times the reward, yes, it's not going to be, you get micro, like you have micro successes or failures within these this area, but the thing is the work that you have to put into that. Like if you have a line segment that goes A to B and that's your destination B, there's an amount of work depending on the complexity of the whole system, is proportional to how much work you have to put into that. And of course, if you're interested, you're going to willing to do that. But if you always just have the expectation constantly on your mind, B, or the destination on your mind, and you just focus solely on the destination, or these external sources, like how much money you're going to make, or fame, how successful you get, and you go to these other YouTube videos and watch other people gain success, and you want to do this or that. It's just going to dampen everything, because ultimately a lot of times these are the extreme cases. Those it seems like the frequency of these cases are higher because the circulation of videos is spreading. There's If you mathematically want to construct this, you basically take how would I put this? You imagine okay, if you take a video and you put it directed in a linear line, it goes in one direction. Well, let's say on the internet, it just goes in one direction. It's going to hit into a subset of the population, but only the subset of the population that follows that line. Now, let's take, like YouTube would be like, let's say a source, a one source line. But that source now gets distributed from person to person to person to person, and so forth. It keeps getting distributed. And now you're going to different domains on the internet. You're going to different platforms. So now you're creating more lines, and you're getting intersections. You're getting multiple intersections. And therefore, it's like the probability is so much higher to consider to assume that the frequency of these events are increasing, but rather they're still pretty rare. They're not These are cases where those are anyone who gets to that level. It's just so happens that yes, they had the it could be you could be a prodigy, but there's not many prodigies in this world. And that's just what you gotta take into consideration. I also believe you should just focus on improving the optimizing internally, having that somewhat of an expectation of uh, where you want to basically of your work, and trying to challenge yourself. I guess it's good to push yourself rather than focusing externally on others. It's better just to put energy and improve, but you also got to balance this equation because um, you can't just be totally internal. You got to have some energy going externally, but in the right direction. You don't want to just focus on these the superficial areas, wealth or fame. It doesn't. The key is to just grow and keep optimize or continue to optimize or continue to improve, continue to change the mindset in a positive direction, continue to challenge and accept challenges, continue to push through obstacles, and not let that deter you. Uh, Also, keep learning. There's always a wealth of information, but ultimately, if you keep putting energy and work and trying to keep uh, improving, well, eventually that line segment or wherever you want to get to the distance and keeps increasing. You go up a mountain, you may not ever reach this, like, let's say if you do have an expectation, you may not reach that peak, but the key is you try and you know not really put so much emphasis on the expectation and relate it with a failure, because the ultimate, the key to get reward is actually the journey. The key of getting reward is pushing through an obstacle or challenge. You may bang your head on the wall a few times. It may be tough, but if you succeed, it's a long-term reward. It's not a short-term reward that you get when you like eat something, or or you're basically uh, you have these, like, or get on social media and you have followers, you get more followers. These are just smaller minute rewards that you receive, and you have to have those at a higher frequency if you're gonna to actually, to represent this mathematically, you could consider those as they're instantaneous rewards, but they dampen much faster. They're very immediate, but they're not long lasting. Now when you challenge yourself and you actually succeed, and you get from the reward is proportional to the distance. But the thing is based on the distance that you place, if you have that expectation in mind always, and you connect that expectation with failure, you're more likely than to be or going more likely to fail. um, Basically, a lot of times, I've learned that sometimes you just got to push through uh, shitty, or just tough situations to get to situations or areas that are more smooth. So first, you may need to go through turbulence to get to, a smooth uh, transition, or to have a smooth transition to another area. And eventually, as you continue, you keep learning. Well, what ends up happening is the a similar situation becomes more smooth. So initially, the initial point is always going to be more perceived as more difficult, and it's usually going to be bumpy. But then it gets smooth over time, and then you run into another bumpy situation, and that's the key. Is you get these rewards based on uh, progress, or not giving up. Once you give up, that's going to stick. It sticks. So the key is separating yourself from the just focusing mainly on 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 moving, and just getting over the humps, and basically not having that uh, expectation uh, linked to every single uh, action that you take. Let the action basically be the motivation to just move higher and higher and higher up the mountain. And, you know, um, it's always good to set these endpoints, but the key is just knowing uh, what needs to be done in the intermediate level to get there, and that represents the whole journey, the segments, the small segments of the whole segment, and these are the individual rewards, the small minute rewards that you add up to some, and then when you get to the point, you could set a new point, but once you get there, it really adds up, and it actually lasts longer. So that's just my view. Um, I think with expectation, it's not good to. I mean, it's okay to want money, or or if you want certain things, but the, I think the key is don't put like a number. Don't turn it into the concrete and be like, oh, I'm a failure because I didn't reach this mark. Well, yeah, I think it's just if you actually keep progressing, if you keep uh, never, if you don't give up, the likelihood of reaching there is going to be higher. Possibly, if the expectation is too high, you may never get there. So it's really just setting the reasonable expectation and focusing it internally on how to improve yourself to get to that point, rather than focus on the end point and not improving yourself in the process. That's kind of what I meant in the beginning. But yeah, that's just all I have today or for now, and um, hope this was somewhat useful. I just a lot of times ramble just to get my mind to release the I don't know, or just random thoughts. I think it's good to clean the mind or clear it out, and not always believe, because this is more about perspective. So, of course, my perspective is only based on where I've positioned myself in life. So, really, yeah, I'm not. This channel is not about or being right, or it's just more so about sharing my or viewpoint, and how I've learned to try to be constructive and change my mindset. This is just the way I've changed, try to change my mindset to go in a positive direction. And there's always going to be a more optimal solution. And that, I'm seeking that. And you only seek that by entering new situations. So I'm just going to end here, and I hope it helped, and I'll see you next